Hello, Town of Kingsville. Dennis Rogers from the desk of the mayor. Been a little bit since I've done one of these, turn of the year, and I definitely wanted to get back on it. And I thought it important to really highlight, some of the things that happened, the great things that happened in 2025. Unfortunately, sometimes all we hear is the negative, and I think it's really important to highlight, the great things that happen within our community. We've got some great residents, great user groups, great community groups, great volunteers, great staff, people that put a lot of time and effort to ensure, that Kingsville is great as it is. And I think it's really important for us to be able to highlight that. And that's what you're going to see here today. So, years ago, we put together this plan, a strategic plan, Kingsville 2040, which is a long-term plan for really where we're going, where we're at currently, as well as decisions up into the future. And, there's 4 pillars for that. One is the fiscally sustainable community, thriving local economy, happy, healthy residents, and the last is resilient infrastructure. So every decision we've made, every policy, you name it, has been a part of those 4 pillars, and we decide accordingly. So fiscally sustainable community, last year we approved our 2025 asset management plan. So this is, every road, sidewalk, bridge, building, facility, you name it, it's in a plan, what the lifespan of it, how much it's going to cost, what the replacement is, what we got to budget for it, you name it. And, these are things we have to be good at. Now we've got a great, strong plan for that, and we can budget accordingly, into the future. Because again, as municipalities, we have to be good at our current infrastructure. That's our number one job. Thriving local economy. So we created a community improvement plan. So what this is tax incentives to be able to bring in commercial and industrial businesses into our town. Be able to create jobs. It's based on construction value, a number of jobs, that are created. We understand the pressures that our residential tax base face. So it's important for us to work really hard to really increase that commercial industrial tax footprint. We had a partnership with the University of Windsor, very exciting. They're going to help us, with research and supporting our administrative team. So great partnership with the university. The West Side Collector Road. So the water main is in, roads, get shovels in the ground, go for the road. Next year, it's really going to open up our west side, not only on the residential side, but, our commercial footprint over there as well. We celebrated many businesses, openings, anniversaries. I know I'm a little biased being a small business owner, but, I can tell you our town was built on the backs of our small businesses. They're the face of our town, the core, really the heart of our town is the downtown there. And it's important for us to continue to support, elevate, and really celebrate them. Great tourism events. One I want to highlight is, the Great Migration Paint Out. This is one where we have people come from all over North America, and, they come and stay in the town. They spend money in the town. You drive around and you see them painting all over the place. It's, really is a great event. Really love to see it. So third pillar is happy, healthy residents. We opened the new Gosfield Communications Community Center. Thank you so much to Gosfield North Communications, for your generous sponsorship, helping make this happen. It's a great multi-use center there. It'll, move the library there, into Cottam, increase our programming there in Cottam. Here's an exciting thing is our summer camps in Kingsville are up 87% year over year, which is fantastic. So thank you to the team to continue to expand that. So we signed a memorandum of understanding with Erie Migration School. So what this does is it allows, all the students to be able to use all of our facilities for free, and in turn for us to have access to their gymnasium. So we've been able to open up some programming within the gym space, and what you'll see this year now is us reaching out to the community groups, within Kingsville to see what their rec needs are within the gymnasium, and then be able to work with them to get them access into the space as well. So stay tuned for that one. Our new sensory pad at Lakeside Park was opened. Thank you so much to the Rotary of Kingsville South Shore. I tell you, it really is such a great addition, to really our signature park. Such a cool thing. Very happy to see that. All these great events that we had last year. We had our Kingsville block parties, Fantasy of Lights, our nature and garden show, which always my favorite. Get your gardens going early. With live at the lighthouse with live music, at our mayor's golf tournament, which continued to fund, our Rec for All, which provides funding for deserving families, for arts and culture, as well as, recreation programming. So please contact us if you have questions on that one. And of course, our 2040 Fire Master Plan. So what this does is lays a plan for current and future requirements for our fire services. So again, a very important thing for us to have a plan for our fire services for now and into the future. And our last pillar is resilient infrastructure. So we've been increasing our capital investment in current infrastructure. So our current infrastructure, what we should be funding to keep it up is about $18 million. So that's current. So current roads, culverts, sidewalks, you name it. So we should be investing $18 million every year to upkeep it, replace it, you name it. Right now, we're only doing $11 million. And that needle has moved up here the last couple of years. So you can imagine we're only funding 55% of current infrastructure. So, we need a plan for that. And we do. And we've stretched it out, over 15 years to go over 2040. It's a slow plan. We didn't want to crank the wheel right away because that's not fair, to current residents. But this is something we have to address. And we figured out a long-term plan to be able to do that. So, that's, we got to stick to the plan to ensure that, again, infrastructure is our number one job as municipalities, and we got to stick to it. It was a heck of a year for grants, record-breaking year for grants for our town. We received $9 million for the water line to go on the west side. We received $7.4 million for the West Side Collector Road. Those were two of the largest infrastructure grants our town has seen in recent history, and those are above and beyond the annual infrastructure funding that we receive from the province. We received $500,000 for a community sport and recreation infrastructure fund grant, the largest recreation grant our town has seen in recent history. So we got a great working relationship with our MPP, so we're going to continue to do that. We received $300,000 to top up the nurse practitioner-led clinic. So this is going to allow an additional 800 patients to be rostered within that clinic. A couple of years ago, we got initial funding to get it going within this term, and now this year we topped it up to a full-blown clinic. So very exciting news. We received $21,000, for smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. And, it was really a great year, and we're going to continue, to work with our upper levels of government. I can tell you what I look at as one of my main jobs is building relationships with our provincial and federal government, opening them up to the needs that our community needs, and is in finding tax dollars, provincial and federal tax dollars, getting them reinvested in our community. And, I think our team's working hard at that, and I think it's evident within, the grants that we've been receiving. Relationships. Our whole community is based on the relationships that we have, our community groups, our user groups, you name it. We worked with our friends at Lions Hall and the Lions Club to find a long-term home for our community food bank. So now they're at Lions Hall, and then we thought it was important, there was a couple more pieces there. So we worked with South Essex Community Council and brought them to the Lions Hall as well for them to be able to expand and grow their programming and what they bring to the community. So you really couple those two together, with the Lions Club, and now we've got a community hub, in the heart of our town, providing many services, to our residents. So a very exciting year on that one. We had a great partnership and relationship with Caldwell First Nation. We partnered with them on Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as Truth and Reconciliation Day initiatives. Again, a lot of great people that we're working with. We're making a lot of strides. I got to thank, everybody that helps make this happen. I know you've got a very hardworking council, and, these are your friends and your neighbors and business people, and they're working really hard to make sure that our community is as great as it can be. And again, to me, my goal, my focus is always on the positive. It's looking forward. If we have issues, we're going to address them and look forward. But I can tell you we have a great community. So happy and privileged to be your head of council, but we're going to continue to work hard for you. So thank you so much. Hope you have a great day. Hope everybody's staying warm. I guess one last shout out is thank you so much to everyone that's been working to clear our roads and our sidewalks and our pathways. You've been working around the clock. You've been cold, you've been tired, and just know you are very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Please stay safe out there.